Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about a building that is often overlooked, underutilized, and underrated in general. And this building is of course the Outpost. Now the Outpost costs 25 wood and 5 stone, so it's relatively cheap and it's available for us right away at the Dark Age. The purpose of the Outpost is very simple. It is a vision building, and so it's not something that is inherently a defensive building. It doesn't have any damage, it won't force enemy units away, it can't shoot arrows or anything like that. So on its own, it's not very effective. However, what it gets you is invaluable. It gets you information, it gets you vision, and it's stationary. You put it there and it gets you vision in that area until it dies by your opponent or you delete it or something like that. But if nothing happens to it, you get vision of that area for the rest of the game, which is really strong. Now the Outpost actually scales as the game goes on. So in Dark Age, it gives you a little bit of vision, but it's not that impressive. So Outposts in Dark Age are not that crazy. However, as you advance through the ages, so from Dark to Feudal to Castle to Imp, it actually gets a little bit more line of sight at each age. And then you can also upgrade it through Town Watch and Town Patrol at the Town Center. And those upgrades, especially Town Watch, is really important for your Outposts because it gets you a good amount of extra vision starting right away at the Feudal Age. Outposts in general are really good at spotting out raids, controlling areas of the map, and knowing when to expand by getting vision first to make sure that the way is cleared. One obvious use of the Outpost is to make sure that your opponent is not going to attack you from any flank and to make sure that you're going to be covered from any surprise raids. Imagine the situation where you're playing on all visible and you can spot your opponent's army right away at his base as soon as he's making them and sending them across the map. You'll have ample time to set up defense, counter units, camp a hill, whatever the case may be, because you've seen him coming across the map. Well, we can't get that much vision using just Outposts. That is a dream scenario, but we can try to get close to that scenario in order to have a part of the benefit. So the way we do that is we get Outposts in key areas of the map. And I'm not just talking around our base, which could be helpful to spot out enemy raids, but we can actually go further than that and place Outposts in the middle of the map to spot our opponent coming across the map from very far away, so we can anticipate his raids and not get caught off guard with them. Of course, this is not something that we can justify doing way too early in the game, because although the Outposts are cheap, sending rogue villagers out in Feudal Age or in Dark Age to plant outposts across the map might be still a little bit too expensive, as that's a villager that's not working, but instead spending a little bit of time and resources on outposts. So in the early game, it is hard to justify that. However, come Castle Age onwards, it is pretty much free game as to where you're going to be placing these outposts. As long as you have a little bit of stone and a little bit of wood to spare, you can place outposts literally everywhere. Pick up Town Watch, Castle Age onwards, it is so free for how much value you get. You're paying such a small cost. I highly recommend you just start planting them in the middle of the map, on the sides, near your opponent's base, in the corners of the map, just to get as much vision as possible. You really can't go wrong with Outposts. You can't overuse these things, especially, like I said, Castle Age onwards. Now let's be a little bit more strategic. Let's say we didn't want to follow that rule of thumb of just spam them across the map wherever you see fit. Let's say we just want to get the most value for the smallest amount of Outpost usage. Well, then what I'd recommend is seeing it from a strategical perspective, starting from the Feudal Age. Now in the Feudal Age, you can use a couple outposts with Town Watch instead of walling your base. You can just put maybe 4 outposts around your base so that you can see a good amount of your surroundings, so that if your opponent comes and you have army, you can easily just rotate your army to where your opponent is likely to attack you. This method of defending is really useful, but it requires you to have a defensive army at the ready, because remember, the vision alone will not repel raids. So if you can't wall because the segment is just way too big, or you just happen to not want to wall your base for whatever reason, it's actually cheaper to just use outposts and get the vision control instead of walling up massive segments of your exposed map. This is a very strategic way to use outposts in Feudal Age, and I highly recommend it. Now in Castle Age, especially in early Castle, if we can't quite justify spamming outposts across the map yet, I highly recommend you drop an outpost in the center of the map and then one a little bit further forward towards your opponent. This will make it so if your opponent ever wants to move either from his base towards you or from one side of the map to the other side of the map, you will see him on the outpost. This does one of two things. This lets you see what your opponent is going for. This lets you see if the road is clear to attack your opponent. And this also lets you keep an eye on your opponent's army as he's going from one side to the other side, so you can keep track of where his army is and you can either match it to defend and attack his army, or you can go to the other side and attack his base. You'd be surprised, but just 2 or 3 outposts down the center of the map can get you so much vision. And so if you're not quite ready to spam them all around the map yet, just a few in the center of the map will do the trick for you just fine. I also also highly recommend you get into the habit of expanding to the size of the base, not by just sending a few villagers on their own. Just send 1 or 2 vills first to make an outpost, then send more villagers to go and make a town center. If you send 10 vills right away and you get caught, you lose 10 vills. But if you send just 1 vill, make an outpost. If you get caught, hey, we lost 1 villager. It's no big deal. So in late Castle Age, early Imperial Age, when we're looking to expand, do it with 1 villager first, make an outpost, make maybe a second outpost, and then when the road is clear, then you can go and expand onto that side of the map. This is a really safe and easy way to expand and be consistent in your expansion, even without having a single military unit to defend yourself with. And hey, listen, if you make an outpost and the road is in fact blocked, your opponent has army there, just expand to another side of the map. No worries. The map is big and your opponent can't watch all the corners. So if he happens to be in the one you're expanding to, just pick another one and you're golden. Now, we've talked about outposts for defensive purposes, but I highly recommend you see the aggressive purposes of the outpost as well. If you're on the offensive and instead of wanting to keep an eye on your opponent's army, you actually want to keep an eye on your opponent's base to see what reactions he's going for and where he's vulnerable, then what you can do is take control of a position forward, send 1 forward villager, and make outposts around your opponent's base. If you pick up Town Watch, you can see really deep into your opponent's base using these outposts, and you can actually see what transition he's making with his units. You can see where he's vulnerable, where he's got villagers gathering resources without any protection, and you can raid there with your army. And it's super cheap if you think about it as well, because the 1 villager is not that much of an investment, and the outposts themselves are not too expensive. So in worst case scenario, we're losing 1 vill and a little bit of time, which is no big deal whatsoever. Highly recommend you use outposts aggressively. Overall, I feel like the outposts have a ton of application and they're very heavily underused at the moment. I think pro players are just starting to realize how strong they could be and how much value you get for such a low cost. I really believe that the rule of thumb, especially in late game, of just spamming them everywhere will become a lot more popular because they're just so cheap, such a low investment, and if you just get a bunch around the map, it's annoying for your opponent to clear them up. Of course, we should talk about some counterplay to outposts. It's not like it's completely overpowered. If your opponent is aware that you're going to be outposting the map, he might patrol some light cav around and try to snipe your villagers. Picking off a few stray vills can help him develop his game and prevent you from getting the outpost. So of course, you can't always get the outpost down if your opponent is aware of it, but I think going for it, especially in the safe areas of the map, to start and then slowly expanding with your vision is a pretty good and safe game plan. So while there is counterplay, your opponent can easily stop you from making outposts. He could kill your outposts when you make them. It's pretty annoying to do that, and it takes a long time to just run around killing outposts, and most players with their military want to do something a little bit more impactful. So in pro play, I really think we're going to see a lot more outposting the map, a lot more just spamming them in late game, just multiple, throw them up. Even if you have a couple in the same spot, it's no big deal because your opponent would just take longer to clear them out. And they're really cheap. I re-emphasize how cheap they are. 5 stone, 25 wood is absolutely nothing in Imperial Age. So I think keep an eye on it, but I think the meta going forward for pro play is going to be a lot of vision control. We've gotten really good at, what compositions to go for, how to make use of them, how to raid, how to secure the map. Now it's all about dropping that vision to be able to keep an eye on your opponents, keep an eye on the raids, and gain a strategical advantage on the map using that superior vision control. All right, that's all I had to say about Outposts, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you guys want to see more guides and more content from me, check out my Patreon. If you want to see me live streaming, check out my Twitch. Links in the description. And if not, then make sure to like, comment, subscribe to help me out on the YouTube algorithm side of things. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.